In the hearts of those who trust God, becoming parents to a pair of twins is not merely a biological event. It is a sacred gift, a sign of divine orchestration by the Almighty. Amara and Aisha Johnson, identical twin sisters raised in a struggling neighborhood of Detroit, had a bond far beyond mere physical resemblance. They were companions, keepers of each other's secrets, sources of comfort in dark days, and flames that ignited hope in each other's hearts. Their sisterhood, forged through the harsh trials of childhood, stood as a living testament to the power of love and faith. But this story is not only about them. It also tells of James and Michael Carter, white American twin brothers, raised in a strict military family where discipline and responsibility always came first. 4 people, 2 sets of twins, were drawn together by fate on a journey full of emotion, culminating in a wedding day that marked not only the union of 2 couples, but also a miracle of cultural fusion, faith, and love. Amara and Aisha, with their deep brown skin and radiant eyes, were used to being mistaken for each other since childhood. They often giggled when strangers stared at them, trying to spot the differences between 2 nearly identical faces. But to them, the resemblance was more than skin deep. They shared dreams, fears, and an unshakable belief that God had a plan for them, even when life seemed to turn its back. Growing up in Detroit's East Side, where pothole-filled streets and crumbling houses told tales of struggle, they learned to lean on each other to survive the hard times. Their mother, LaToya Johnson, was a resilient woman who raised 9 children on the meager salary she earned at a grocery store. Though she loved her children dearly, LaToya was often exhausted, and the absence of their father, who had left the family when Amara and Aisha were too young to remember, left a void that could never be filled. Thousands of miles away, James and Michael Carter were raised in a completely different world. As sons of an Army colonel, they moved from base to base, from North Carolina to Texas, then to Kansas. Their lives were shaped by strict discipline and their parents' high expectations. James, quiet and introspective, often sought meaning in books and silent prayers. Michael, by contrast, was a free spirit, always wearing a bright smile and passionate about helping others. Despite their different personalities, they shared an unbreakable bond, much like Amara and Aisha. They were best friends, confidants, and each other's source of strength in the demanding world of a military household. The coincidence between these 2 sets of twins did not end with physical resemblance or personality traits. It lay in the way fate, or as Amara often said, the hand of God, brought them together in Chicago in a small but vibrant church where people from all walks of life gathered for hope. The International Church in Chicago was not just the place they met. It was where their distinct paths, one from a poor black neighborhood, the other from the transient life of a white military family, intersected, creating a beautiful story of love and harmony. Their wedding day, an event all 4 would remember forever, was not only significant because they became husband and wife. It stood as a symbol of the miraculous connection between the 2 sets of twins. It was a double wedding, where Amara and Aisha walked down the aisle together hand in hand, with James and Michael, surrounded by loved ones, in a setting filled with gospel music and traditional hymns. But what made that day truly special wasn't just the beauty of the ceremony. It was the long and challenging journey of hardship, loss, and hope that had led them to that moment. It was a story of how faith, family, love, and resilience could overcome all barriers from skin color and background to past scars. Amara, who narrates this story, often says that God wrote their destiny long before they knew it. When I look into Aisha's eyes, I see my whole world. She shares her voice full of emotion. And when I look at James and Michael, I know that God didn't just bless us with sisterhood. He gave us love that defies every boundary the world tries to impose. Their story began with the hardship of Detroit and distant military bases, but it brought them to a crossing point where they found love and also a deeper meaning in family, community, and faith. That journey from the dusty streets of Detroit to the glowing lights of a wedding celebration was anything but easy. It was filled with challenges, abandonment by parents, years of looking after one another, and unforeseeable losses. Yet in the darkest moments, Amara, Aisha, James, and Michael learned to trust in each other, and in the greater plan they believed God had ordained. This is not merely the story of a double wedding. It is the story of how four people bound by a miraculous twist of fate found light in the darkness and built a future rooted in love and hope. In Amara and Aisha Johnson's memories, childhood in Detroit's East Side was not filled with carefree games or afternoons spent running under golden sunsets. Instead, it was a harsh portrait of pothole-ridden streets, rotting wooden houses with shattered windows, and the distant wail of ambulance sirens echoing through the night. Here in the heart of one of America's poorest neighborhoods, the twin sisters grew up in their mother LaToya Johnson's cramped apartment. A resilient black woman, raising 9 children alone on the meager wages she earned working at a grocery store. For Amara and Aisha, this neighborhood was both home and a labyrinth of challenges, a place where they learned how to survive love and believe that God was watching over them, even when everything seemed to fall apart. LaToya Johnson was the heart of the family. With tightly braided hair and a smile that tried to hide her exhaustion, she worked from early morning until late at night, operating the cash register, restocking shelves, and sometimes taking on delivery shifts to earn a few extra dollars. Each night she returned home with aching feet. Still, she found a way to sit down with her children, checking Amara and Aisha's homework, or telling stories of their grandparents, who once sang hymns in Baptist churches, to endure the hardship of segregation. LaToya often said, "God will always make a way," her voice warm, yet unwavering. Those words etched themselves into Amara and Aisha's minds, becoming a small flame that lit their darkest days. The Johnson home sat on a noisy street where rap music from old cars mixed with neighbors' arguments. Their 2-bedroom apartment was overcrowded with 9 children. Amara and Aisha shared a worn mattress in the corner of the living room. They had 5 older siblings who had learned to be independent early on, and 2 younger ones, Nia and Jamal, who clung to the twin sisters like kittens seeking warmth. Their father, a man Amara only remembered through a few faded photographs, had left when the girls were not even 2 years old. LaToya once said he wasn't strong enough to stay, her voice tinged with bitterness, though not resentment. Amara and Aisha never asked further questions, but their father's absence left an invisible void, like a cold draft slipping through the thin apartment walls. Despite the hardship, LaToya always tried to keep her children wrapped in love. She ensured they went to school, even if it meant walking over a mile when they couldn't afford the bus. On Sunday mornings, the family dressed in their best clothes, often hand-me-downs mended and patched, and walked to the nearby Baptist church. There, amidst the soaring gospel melodies and emotional prayers, Amara and Aisha felt the presence of a higher power, a belief that they were not alone. Church is where we find ourselves. Aisha once told Amara as they held hands and sang Amazing Grace together. Those moments were rare lights in their otherwise shadowed lives. But that light began to fade as LaToya became exhausted. The strain of raising 9 children alone, coupled with the weight of unpaid bills and crushing loneliness, drew her into a state of depression. Amara, sensitive even at 8 years old, noticed her mother changing. LaToya's smiles became rare, and nights spent alone at the kitchen table, staring into nothingness, became more frequent. "I'm so tired, babies," she whispered, as Amara curled into her lap, searching for the familiar comfort. Aisha, always the stronger one, would hold her sister's hand and say, "We'll be okay, Amara. God will help Mama." The collapse came suddenly, though not without warning. When Amara and Aisha woke up one morning, their mother was gone. A note on the kitchen table, written in shaky handwriting, read, "Mama needs time. Take care of your siblings. I love you all." Latoya had moved in with a friend in another neighborhood about a 20-minute walk away. No explanation. There is no promise to return. Amara stood silently by the table, her heart clenched. Although heartbroken, Aisha held her sister's hand and said, "We have to be strong. Mama will come back, but we need to keep this family together for now." In the days that followed, Amara and Aisha, just 8 years old, became the backbone of the family. They used their mother's store credit to buy rice, canned beans, and sometimes sausages for the younger kids. Only 3. Nia clung to Aisha, while 5-year-old Jamal tried to help by washing dishes in an old plastic tub. Their older siblings used to. The toughness of life began taking on part-time jobs or staying over at friends' homes, leaving Amara and Aisha to carry the burden of caring for the little ones. Every night the two knelt beside their old mattress and prayed with all the faith they had. "Dear God, please bring Mama back. Please keep us safe," Amara whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. Aisha, always the strong one, held her close and promised, "We'll get through this, Amara. Together we can do anything." But East Detroit was no safe place for children living on their own. Gunshots would occasionally pierce the night, and suspicious glances from neighbors made Amara uneasy. She remembered nights when she and Aisha huddled together, listening to the wind howl through the broken windows, wondering if their mother would ever return, or if they could continue like this forever. Amara's faith in God still burned in her heart, but the brutal weight of reality was testing it. And it was in that moment of despair, a flicker of hope appeared in the form of a missionary couple they had met at church, people who would soon change the course of the twins' lives forever. In a cramped apartment on Detroit's east side, where flickering streetlight poured through a broken window, 8-year-old Amara and Aisha Johnson faced the greatest challenge of their young lives. Their mother, Latoya, had left, leaving only a note filled with vague promises and an aching void in her children's hearts. For the twin sisters, this dangerous neighborhood was no longer just home. It had become a battlefield where they had to fight to keep their small family from falling apart. With their faith in God and love for their younger siblings, Amara and Aisha became little mothers, big sisters, and flickers of light in the darkness, even though they were trembling with fear. In the days following Latoya's departure, Amara and Aisha struggled to maintain order in a household long used to chaos. The apartment, musty with the smell of old carpet and stained walls, became their fortress. Like little soldiers, they divided tasks. Amara was in charge of cooking, using their mother's store credit to buy rice, canned beans, and occasionally a cheap pack of sausages. Aisha, the stronger of the two, cared for Nia, their clingy 3-year-old sister, and Jamal, their wide-eyed 5-year-old brother. The older siblings, already used to fending for themselves, were often absent, leaving the 4 youngest in the hands of the twins. Each morning, Amara woke early and climbed onto a wooden stool to cook rice porridge on the old gas stove. The smell of scorched rice sometimes made her cough, but she smiled when she saw Nia and Jamal hungrily devour the bland porridge around the table. "I'll do better today." "Okay," Amara said, forcing a cheerful tone to ease their fears. Aisha, meanwhile, wiped porridge from Nia's cheeks and hummed gospel songs they remembered from the Baptist church. "God is watching us, Nia," she whispered, pulling her sister into a hug. "He won't leave us alone." But the truth was that East Detroit was no place for children to live without adults. Gunshots echoed in the night, sometimes close enough to startle Amara awake, clutching Aisha in the darkness. The neighbors, though kind, had their own lives to worry about, and the wary stares of strangers on the street made Amara feel like prey. She remembered one afternoon when a man stood at the corner, staring intently at her and Aisha as they walked Nia to buy milk. "Hurry," Aisha whispered, gripping her sister's hand, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay composed. That night, Amara knelt beside the old mattress and prayed with all her might. "Dear God, please keep us safe. Please bring Mama back. Please show us a way out." Despite the fear, the two sisters did their best to keep life moving for their younger siblings. They walked Nia and Jamal to a nearby preschool, even if it meant passing streets filled with trash and loitering teens. At school, the teachers noticed changes in their behavior. Amara had grown quieter, while Aisha remained constantly alert, as if ready to protect at a moment's notice. One day, Nia's teacher, Mrs. Thompson, pulled Amara aside and asked, "Where is your mother?" "Sweetheart." Amara, her eyes brimming with tears, shook her head. Mrs. Thompson, a Baptist church member, didn't press further, but her eyes were filled with concern. Amara and Aisha's resilience wasn't just in caring for their siblings, but in how they clung to their faith through the darkest days. Every night after the little ones had fallen asleep, the twins would sit across from each other on the floor and share their tiny dreams. "When I grow up, I want to be a gospel singer," Aisha said, her eyes glowing. "And I want to be a teacher," Amara replied, a rare smile on her face. "To help kids like us." Those moments, though fleeting, were the medicine that kept them going. But they both knew they couldn't live like this forever. The neighborhood was too dangerous, and they were too young to carry the weight of an entire family. After 2 months of uncertainty, a glimmer of hope appeared. With her sharp memory, Aisha recalled a missionary couple they had once met at church, Robert and Clara Thompson. The two were known in the community for their kindness, often delivering food to struggling families and organizing prayer circles for children. "We have to find them," Aisha said, her voice filled with determination. Amara, though hesitant, nodded. She feared that asking for help might split their family apart, but she also knew they had no other choice. One chilly morning, Amara and Aisha held Nia and Jamal's hands and walked over a mile to the Thompsons' house on the neighborhood's edge. When Clara opened the door and saw 4 shivering children in thin, worn clothes, she immediately pulled them into her arms. "What are you doing here, sweethearts?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "Courage. With far beyond her 8 years," Aisha replied. "Our mama's gone. We need help." That heavy yet straightforward truth opened a new door for Amara and Aisha. Clara and Robert, with open hearts, welcomed the children into their home and promised to care for them until Latoya returned. Standing in the warmth of the Thompsons' home, Amara felt a tear roll down her cheek, not out of sadness, but because she felt safe for the first time in weeks. That moment marked a turning point, but it was also the beginning of a new journey filled with challenges and opportunities Amara and Aisha had never imagined. In their hearts, their faith in God, though tested, still burned strong. They had no idea that their decision to seek out the Thompsons would not only rescue them from the dangers of their neighborhood, but also set them on the path toward a new family, a new life, and ultimately toward James and Michael Carter, the 2 men who would one day become an inseparable part of their fairy tale. On a cold morning in East Detroit, Amara and Aisha Johnson stood in front of the weathered wooden door of Robert and Clara Thompson's house, holding the hands of their 3-year-old sister Nia and 5-year-old brother Jamal. The twin sisters, only 8 years old, had hope and fear in their hearts. The impoverished neighborhood, with its trash-littered streets and nightly gunshots, had pushed them to their limit. After 2 months of caring for their siblings alone, since their mother Latoya had left Amara and Aisha, knew they could not continue alone. Their prayers whispered through trembling lips on an old mattress, night after night, seemed answered when Clara Thompson opened the door, her eyes filled with compassion. That moment was not just salvation from danger. It was the doorway to a new family, a new life, and eventually to their destiny with James and Michael Carter. Clara Thompson, with her silver hair tied up neatly, and her warm smile immediately knelt and embraced all 4 children. "What are you doing here out in the cold?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Aisha, always the strong one, took a deep breath and said, "Our mama's gone. We don't know what to do anymore." The words, though simple, weighed heavy like a cry from the heart. Robert, a tall man with a deep, calm voice, stepped out from the living room, his gaze gentle but steady. No further explanation was needed. He and Clara brought the children inside and sat them around the wooden kitchen table, where the smell of freshly baked bread lingered. For the first time in weeks, Amara felt warmth, not just from the fireplace, but from the care they were receiving. The Thompson house, though modest, was an oasis in the harsh neighborhood. The walls were decorated with children's drawings and handwritten Bible verses, reflecting the open hearts of the missionary couple. Robert and Clara, active members of the local Baptist church, had dedicated their lives to helping struggling families, from distributing food to organizing Bible lessons for children. Amara recalled the times they brought cookies to the Johnsons' apartment, and how Clara sang hymns in a voice so rich and warm that it made the whole church tremble. That same kindness wrapped around them like a warm blanket in a storm. In the following days, Robert and Clara contacted Latoya, who was living not far away, but still not ready to return. Through tearful phone calls, Latoya agreed to let the Thompsons care for her 4 youngest children, while the older siblings stayed with relatives. Amara, secretly listening in from the stairs, felt her heart tighten. She missed her mother, missed the nights Latoya held her close and sang lullabies, but she also understood that her mother needed time to heal. Aisha, sitting beside her, took her hand and whispered, "Mama will be okay, Amara. Right now, we have a safe place." Those words, spoken by an 8-year-old, carried the strength of a faith they had learned in church. 6 months later, a greater change arrived for Amara and Aisha. Robert and Clara's daughter, Michelle Harris, and her husband, David Harris, a pastor from Chicago, came to visit. Michelle, a black woman, with a radiant smile and a passionate heart, was immediately drawn to the resilience of the twin girls. David, quiet and compassionate with the soul of a shepherd, saw in Amara and Aisha 2 spirits in need of nurturing. After days of prayer and discussion with Latoya, Michelle and David adopted Amara and Aisha, while Nia and Jamal remained with Robert and Clara. "Would you like to come live with us in Chicago?" Michelle asked, kneeling to look directly into the twins' eyes. Amara, anxious about leaving Nia and Jamal, nodded when she saw Aisha smile. "God made a way," Aisha said, repeating the words their mother had once taught them. The journey to Chicago marked an emotional turning point. Amara and Aisha, carrying a few sets of clothes in an old cloth bag, sat in Michelle and David's car, watching the familiar streets of Detroit fade behind them. With its towering skyscrapers and fast pace, Chicago was a whole new world. The Harris home in Bronzeville, a cultural hub for African Americans, was overflowing with love and diversity. Michelle and David had adopted 9 other children from various backgrounds, from Haitian orphans to local children with special needs, alongside their 2 biological daughters, Sophie and Michaela. As Amara stepped into a house filled with the smell of curry and the sound of children's laughter, she felt overwhelmed and comforted at once. "This is your home now," Michelle said, hugging the twins tightly. Still, the transition wasn't easy. Amara and Aisha, shaped by the harshness of Detroit, felt out of place in their new environment. They missed Nia and Jamal, missed Sunday mornings at the Baptist church, and above all, missed their mother. In those first few nights, Amara often cried silently, clinging to Aisha in their new bed. "Did we do the right thing by leaving?" she asked, her voice trembling. With familiar resolve, Aisha replied, "We have to believe, Amara. God brought us here for a reason." Those words, and the love from Michelle and David, helped them slowly find their place in their new family. The Harris home was a place where two cultures blended. Michelle raised in the gospel tradition, and black culture taught Amara and Aisha the songs of Mahalia Jackson. At the same time, David, whose mother was Irish-American, shared stories about unity through faith. Their adoptive siblings, each with different backgrounds and stories, became sources of inspiration for Amara and Aisha. Over time, the sisters learned to call Michelle Mom and David Dad, though they still held space in their hearts for LaToya, whom they called weekly. The salvation that Robert and Clara had offered, and the love that Michelle and David nurtured, didn't just shelter them, it planted the seeds of a future they had never dared to dream of. A future that would eventually lead them to the International Church in Chicago, where James and Michael Carter were waiting, as part of the divine plan God had already set in motion. With its shimmering skyscrapers under the sunlight and the bustling rhythm of Michigan Avenue, Chicago was a completely foreign world to Amara and Aisha Johnson. The moment they stepped into the Harris home in Bronzeville, the 8-year-old twin sisters felt as if they were walking into a dream, beautiful yet uncertain. After months of living in fear in the impoverished East Detroit neighborhood, the warmth of their adoptive family felt like a gift from God, but it came with new challenges. In a home filled with laughter, the aroma of curry, and overflowing love, Amara and Aisha had to find their place, adapt to a diverse family, and confront cultural barriers, language gaps, and homesickness. That journey would shape who they became and prepare them for their future encounter with James and Michael Carter. The Harris home in Bronzeville, a cultural hub for Black Americans, was vibrant and full of life. The walls were adorned with children's drawings, family photos, and handwritten Bible verses, making it a miniature sanctuary. Michelle Harris, with her radiant smile and warm voice, was the family's heart. David Harris, a pastor with calm eyes, brought stability and compassion. Alongside their two biological daughters, Sophie 9 and Michaela 7, the Harris family had adopted 9 children from various backgrounds, including Haiti, Ukraine, and underserved neighborhoods in Chicago, 5 of whom had special needs. When Amara first entered the house, she was overwhelmed by the laughter, squabbling voices, and loving chaos. Michelle said, "This is your home now," hugging the twins tightly. But Amara couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. The shift from Detroit to Chicago was a cultural shock. Amara and Aisha were used to trash-filled streets, rap music from car speakers, and Sunday gospel singing at the Baptist church in Detroit. Though a Black cultural center, Bronzeville had a different rhythm, more vibrant, filled with street performers, second-hand bookstores, and poetry nights at cafes. The Harris family, a blend of Michelle's Black heritage and David's Irish-American roots, embodied a cultural fusion the girls had never experienced. Family dinners reflected that harmony, where Michelle's jambalaya sat next to David's Irish-style potato cakes. But for Amara and Aisha, everything was still too new, too different. The biggest challenge was school. They were enrolled in a nearby public school, where most students were white or Latinx. As two Black girls from Detroit's inner city, they felt like outsiders. Academic English was a significant hurdle in Detroit. They mostly spoke a mix of street slang. Amara remembered her first classes stumbling through a reading passage in front of the class, met with curious stares and a few giggles. Aisha, always the strong one, squeezed her sister's hand under the desk and whispered, "Don't worry about them, Amara. We're smarter than they think." But even Aisha struggled to keep up, especially when teachers asked them to write essays, a concept they had never encountered before. Beyond language barriers, homesickness plagued them. They missed Nia and Jamal, their younger siblings living with Robert and Clara in Detroit. They missed their mother Latoya, whom they called weekly, but the calls often ended in tears. "I'm trying my babies," Latoya would say, through the phone, her voice frail. Amara, though trying to forgive, couldn't erase the feeling of abandonment. During their first nights in Chicago, she often woke up crying silently, clinging to Aisha. "Should we have stayed?" she asked, voice trembling. With the steady faith that had carried them through Detroit, Aisha answered, "God brought us here, Amara. We have to trust His plan." Michelle and David, sensing the girls' struggle, became their unwavering support. Michelle sat with them each night, teaching them to read, using colorful picture books, patiently correcting each mispronounced word. With his warm storytelling voice, David shared Bible stories of resilience like Joseph, overcoming adversity. "You are little warriors," he'd say, placing a gentle hand on their shoulders. "God chose you for something great." Those words and the love of their new siblings slowly helped Amara and Aisha feel like they belonged. Sophie and Michaela, once shy, became close friends, teaching them to jump rope and backyard games. Church also played a key role in their adjustment. The Harris family attended the International Church of Chicago, a diverse community where gospel music blended with traditional hymns. Amara found comfort in singing in the children's choir, her voice rising in songs like "Oh Happy Day." Aisha, bold and curious, joined Bible study classes and asked profound questions about faith. If God loves us, why did Mama leave? She wondered, a pastor. The answer that God works in mysterious ways, always with a plan, became a guiding light for her. Gradually, Amara and Aisha began to bloom. They learned to speak proper English, made friends at school, and even started dreaming about the future. Amara wanted to become a teacher, while Aisha dreamed of being a gospel singer. But deep inside, they still carried scars. Fear of abandonment, longing for their old family. With unconditional love, Michelle and David helped them heal daily. "You are our daughters forever," Michelle whispered, embracing them after a family prayer session. Like a sacred promise, those words planted seeds of hope in Amara and Aisha's hearts, preparing them for the challenges and joy ahead, including their destined meeting with James and Michael Carter at the church that had given them strength. In the warm home of the Harris family in Bronzeville, Chicago, Amara and Aisha Johnson, now 14 years old, had begun to understand the true meaning of a family. After 6 years of being adopted by Michelle and David Harris, the twin sisters had learned to integrate into a diverse household, overcome language barriers, and slowly ease the ache of missing their birth mother, Latoya. They found joy in lively family dinners, gospel singing at the International Church, and the love of their adoptive siblings. But on one cold December evening in 2009, an unexpected tragedy struck, shattering the peace they had worked so hard to build. David Harris, their foster father, with a quiet smile and a boundless heart, died in a car accident, leaving the family in grief and testing Amara and Aisha's faith in God's plan. David Harris, a respected international church pastor, was the family's spiritual pillar. With his deep, gentle voice and ever-hopeful eyes, he had taught Amara and Aisha that love and faith could heal all wounds. He often sat with the girls in the evening, telling them Bible stories like how David defeated Goliath, to inspire courage. "You are God's warriors," he would say, placing a hand on their shoulders. To Amara, who had lost her biological father as a child, David was the ideal father figure, patient, loving, and ever-present. Strong-willed and determined, Aisha saw him as a guide, someone who helped her understand that real strength came from compassion. That fateful day began like any other. David left early in the morning for a pastor's meeting in the Chicago suburbs, promising to return before dinner to help the family decorate the Christmas tree. Amara remembered the moment he kissed her and Aisha on the forehead, saying, "Today will be a great day, girls." But as twilight fell, the doorbell rang, and Michelle, upon opening it, was met by two police officers with heavy expressions. "Mrs. Harris, we're very sorry." Their words were cut short by Michelle's scream. David had died instantly when a truck lost control and crashed into his car on the highway. He was only 39. The news hit the Harris family like a knife through the heart. Michelle, usually as strong as a mountain, collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Amara and Aisha, standing silently on the staircase, felt their world crumble. Amara, ever sensitive, ran to embrace her foster mother, tears streaming down her face as memories of David teaching her chess and singing hymns flooded back. Trying to remain composed, Aisha held her sister's hand tightly, but her shoulders trembled. The foster siblings, Sophie, Michaela, and the others gathered quietly in the living room, embracing one another in silence. Once filled with laughter, the home was now cloaked in unspeakable grief. The days that followed felt like a nightmare. Though broken inside, Michelle tried to keep the family together. She arranged the funeral at the International Church, where hundreds came to honor David's life and legacy. Amara and Aisha stood beside their foster mother, dressed in simple black dresses, listening as others praised David's kindness and devotion. But to Amara, it all felt like a haze. She couldn't understand why God, whom she had trusted, would take away her second father. "What is God doing, Aisha?" she asked one sleepless night, her voice full of anguish. Aisha, also wrestling with pain, answered, "I don't know, Amara. But we must believe he has a reason, even if we can't see it yet." Michelle's sorrow was what hurt Amara and Aisha the most. They often found their foster mother sitting alone in the living room, staring at her wedding photo, with David's silent tears falling. "I want him here," Michelle whispered one evening, when Amara brought her a cup of tea. Those moments reminded Amara of her birth mother, Latoya, and the exhausted look in her eyes back in Detroit. Together, Amara and Aisha resolved to support Michelle in every way they could. They took over cooking, cleaning, and caring for their younger siblings, just as they had done once before. Sophie and Michaela, though still young, joined in creating a circle of love around their grieving mother. The church became a refuge for the family during the emotional storm. Congregation members brought food, prayed with them, and shared stories about David, how he had helped a homeless family find shelter, or sang gospel songs with all his heart. Amara found solace singing in the choir, pouring all her sorrow and hope into the precious Lord, Take My Hand hymn. Aisha, meanwhile, became more probing in Bible study. "How do we go on after losing the person who meant the most?" she once asked a pastor. The answer: faith isn't the absence of pain, it's believing God walks with us through the pain. That sentence became her guiding light. Gradually, the Harris family learned to live with the loss. Though still grieving, Michelle began to smile again when surrounded by her children. Amara and Aisha, though marked by the scar of David's death, grew stronger through the experience. They learned that family love wasn't just about joy, it was a force powerful enough to guide them through the darkest valleys. The grief also deepened their bond with the International Church, where they would soon meet James and Michael Carter, twin brothers, who would bring light back into their lives. In Amara's heart, her faith in God, once shaken, now ran deeper than ever. It served as a quiet reminder that even in tragedy, he was still writing their story. In the vibrant heart of Chicago, the International Church in the Bronzeville neighborhood was where Amara and Aisha Johnson found light after years of darkness. By 2011, the twin sisters, now 16, had endured the harsh trials of their Detroit childhood and the devastating loss of their adoptive father, David Harris. Under the guidance of their adoptive mother, Michelle, and the strength of the church community, they had become resilient young women, full of faith and hope. But one golden autumn afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the church's stained glass windows, fate delivered an encounter that would change their lives forever. James and Michael Carter, white American twin brothers, stepped into their world, marking the beginning of a love story woven by the hand of God. Amara and Aisha, with their deep brown skin and radiant smiles, had become active members of the International Church. Amara, shy and introspective, loved singing in the youth choir, where her voice blended into the emotional swell of gospel melodies. A lively and outspoken Aisha thrived in Bible study sessions, often asking questions that made pastors pause. The church was their place of worship and their second home, where they volunteered in community projects, from distributing food to the homeless to running summer programs for children. During one such volunteer event on a day in October, they met James and Michael. That afternoon, Amara and Aisha were stacking food boxes in the church's supply room, giggling as they tried to tell apart two nearly identical cans of beans. Suddenly, the door swung open, and two young men entered, carrying a case of bottled water. Standing on a stool, Amara nearly dropped a can when her eyes met James Carter's. He was tall and lean, with light brown hair and gentle blue eyes exuding calm. Beside him was Michael, identical in appearance, but more radiant, with a broad smile and relaxed energy. "Oh, wow. Another set of twins," Aisha blurted out, breaking the silence and making all four laugh. James and Michael, 21 years old, were students at the church's Bible college. They had recently moved to Chicago from North Carolina to pursue their passion for community service. Raised in a strict military family by a colonel father, they had been shaped by discipline and duty. With a thoughtful spirit, James found freedom in faith and theological texts. Joyful and energetic, Michael dreamed of bringing happiness to struggling communities through service projects. Their identical looks, yet contrasting personalities, immediately drew Amara and Aisha in. "I'm Amara, and this is Aisha," Amara said, trying to hide her nerves as she shook James's hand. "James, and this is Michael," James replied, his voice warm, his gaze slightly shy. The brief conversation was meaningful. Amara, usually reserved, found herself talking about her love for gospel music when James asked about the choir. "I heard you sing last week during Oh Happy Day. Your voice is special," he said, making Amara's cheeks flush with warmth. "Aisha never missing an opportunity," teased Michael about almost dropping the water case, drawing him into a playful exchange. Though the encounter lasted only minutes, it left a lasting impression. As James and Michael walked away, Amara turned to Aisha and whispered, "Did you see that they're twins too?" With a mischievous grin, Aisha replied, "And I think James likes you." Back in their shared bedroom, Amara and Aisha couldn't stop talking about the Carter twins that night. Amara, who usually kept her feelings private, admitted she felt a strange connection with James, as if he understood her without many words. Aisha, always direct, confessed she was drawn to Michael's joyfulness. "I think God is up to something," Amara, Aisha said, her eyes sparkling. Two sets of twins meeting like this. That can't be random. Amara, still unsure, couldn't deny the sense that this encounter was part of something greater, something like what Michelle and David had always taught them about divine guidance. The coincidence between the two pairs of twins was more than just appearance or background. Amara and Aisha, raised in Detroit's inner-city struggles, carried the heritage of Black culture from gospel music to the resilience of church communities. James and Michael, from a white military family, came from a world where discipline and responsibility defined them. But their differences became bridges at the International Church, where the gospel harmonized with traditional hymns and people of all backgrounds gathered in faith. With its multicultural prayer services and outreach programs, the church became the space where the four young people found common ground through belief and a shared desire to do good. That brief meeting was just the spark. Amara and Aisha had no idea they wouldn't see James and Michael again for another 3 years, until fate would bring them back together during a disaster relief training program. But the moment in the church supply room had planted a seed of love that would grow strong enough to overcome every barrier, skin color, background, even the scars of the past. In Amara's heart, that strange feeling when she looked into James's eyes was the first sign that God was writing a new chapter in their story. Michael's smile reminded Aisha that joy could bloom even after the darkest days. This fateful encounter, stitched together by faith and extraordinary coincidence, was the first step toward a double wedding that would become a symbol of love and unity. 3 years had passed since that fateful encounter in the storage room of the International Church in Chicago. Amara and Aisha Johnson, now 19, had grown into confident young women rooted in faith, strengthened by resilience, and shaped by years of overcoming hardship. Life in the Harris household in Bronzeville had helped them heal the scars from their childhood in Detroit and the pain of losing their adoptive father, David. Yet the memory of James and Michael Carter, twin brothers with warm smiles and sincere eyes, lingered in their minds like a familiar gospel melody. And on a spring morning in 2014, fate, or as Aisha often said, the hand of God, brought the four young people together again during a disaster relief training, marking the beginning of a new chapter where love quietly began to blossom between two sets of twins. Driven by their passion for community service, Amara and Aisha had enrolled in a training course organized by the International Church in preparation for a relief trip to Haiti following the earthquake. In the church's large hall, sunlight streamed through vibrant stained glass windows onto wooden pews where dozens of volunteers gathered. Amara, her hair neatly braided and eyes bright with focus, was diligently taking notes as a pastor lectured on assisting victims. Beside her, Aisha asked questions with her usual curiosity, making the group laugh with her energetic enthusiasm. Suddenly, the doors opened, and two familiar silhouettes entered. Amara felt her heart race as she recognized James Carter, still calm, still gentle, with those same soft blue eyes. Beside him, Michael's radiant grin lit up the room, causing Aisha to drop her pen nearly. James. Michael. Amara exclaimed, her voice a mix of surprise and joy. Holding a folder, James paused, his eyes lighting up in recognition. Amara, Aisha. I can't believe it, he said, his voice deep and warm. Michael relaxed as ever, stepped up and playfully patted Aisha's shoulder. Still asking a million questions, huh? He teased. Aisha, never backing down, shot back. And you still haven't figured out how to carry water properly. Laughter erupted instantly, dissolving the 3-year gap. Like the perfect note in a gospel hymn, that moment drew them closer together. Now, 24. James and Michael completed their theological studies and worked full-time in church-led community projects. James, with his thoughtful nature, oversaw educational programs for underprivileged children. Michael, bursting with energy, led relief teams in disaster zones. Over the past 3 years, they'd traveled across the U.S., from New Orleans to Los Angeles, bringing help to communities in crisis. Yet Chicago and the International Church remained their home. Though unexpected, this reunion with Amara and Aisha felt like something they had all quietly longed for. During the training, Amara and James were often paired for group activities, such as planning food distribution and practicing first aid. Initially shy, Amara gradually opened up as James spoke about his dream of bringing hope to the broken. I grew up in a military family, He said everything had to be perfect, gaze distant. But here I've learned that imperfection often makes things meaningful. Drawn to his sincerity, Amara shared her journey from Detroit, the nights she prayed to conquer fear. God kept Aisha and me together, she said, her voice trembling. James smiled and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. And he brought you here. Meanwhile, Aisha and Michael were a whirlwind of energy. Michael playfully faked an injury during a simulated rescue drill, forcing Aisha to drag him from a hazard zone. "Be serious, Carter," Aisha shouted, but her grin gave her away. Michael, ever charming, replied, "Just making sure you're a real hero." Their playful banter made the whole group laugh, but Aisha felt something more profound beneath Michael's humor, was a heart full of commitment to helping others like hers. Although the Haiti trip was eventually canceled due to logistical issues, the training bonded them. One afternoon, while sitting in the church cafe, James suddenly turned to Amara. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" he asked. "Just the two of us." Amara's heart pounded, but she nodded before even thinking. Aisha immediately jumped in. "Then, Michael, you're coming too." "You're not leaving me out," Michael laughed. "I wouldn't dream of it." Their double date at a small cafe in Bronzeville stretched late into the night. They shared their stories, dreams, and old wounds. Amara and Aisha spoke of Detroit, their mother LaToya, and losing David. James and Michael opened up about the pressure of growing up in a strict military household and their spiritual journey through faith, the cultural differences between them. Amara and Aisha, with their gospel heritage and Black community strength. James and Michael, with their white military upbringing, grounded in discipline and order, became bridges, not walls. The international church, with its multi-ethnic community, had taught them that love and faith transcend all boundaries. Looking into James's eyes, Amara felt a peace she had never known. Laughing at Michael's jokes, Aisha realized he was someone she could truly open her heart to. That night, after they parted ways, James sent Amara a message. "Thank you for today. I'd like to see you again." Aisha read Michael's playful text, "Question girl, same time tomorrow," and burst into laughter. Two sets of twins reconnected by an unexpected reunion were now stepping into a new journey of love, guided by the International Church as a witness and God as their compass. In the soft spring light of Chicago in 2014, Amara and Aisha Johnson, now 19, felt their hearts race each time they thought of James and Michael Carter. The unexpected reunion during the International Church's disaster relief training had sparked something tender between the two pairs of twins, and the double coffee date that followed had opened the door to a deeper connection. Amara, shy but sincere, found peace beside James, a calm man with a thoughtful soul. Bold and radiant, Aisha was drawn to Michael's joy and devoted heart. In the following months, their love blossomed like wildflowers across the fields of Bronzeville, nourished by faith, understanding, and the beautiful blending of two worlds guiding them toward dreams of a shared future. After that first coffee date, James and Michael became an essential part of Amara and Aisha's lives. The International Church, with its multiracial prayer gatherings and community outreach, became their meeting ground. Amara and James often partnered during volunteer projects, such as organizing literacy classes for underserved children. One afternoon, while helping a young boy learn to spell, James turned to Amara and smiled. "You have a way of making people feel safe, Amara." His words, genuine but straightforward, made her blush. She realized that James, shaped by years of discipline in a military household, gave her a sense of being deeply understood, something she had rarely felt before. Aisha and Michael, in contrast, were a lively pair. Together, they led youth activities at church, Michael making the children laugh with stories, while Aisha taught them gospel songs with fiery passion. One day, while preparing a picnic for the kids, Michael spontaneously pulled Aisha into an impromptu dance in the park under the surprised gaze of everyone around. Michael Carter. "You're crazy!" Aisha shouted, but her broad smile said everything. With his enthusiasm and big heart, Michael helped Aisha rediscover joy in life's simple moments, something she had rarely known growing up in Detroit. The cultural differences between the couples became sources of strength rather than obstacles. Amara and Aisha, raised in the black culture of Detroit and Bronzeville, carried the legacy of gospel music community resilience and ancestral stories of triumph over hardship. James and Michael, with their white military upbringing, brought discipline, responsibility, and fresh perspectives on faith. During prayer services at church, when Amara sang Amazing Grace and James quietly read scripture, they found spiritual harmony. Eager to learn, Michael even tried singing gospel songs with Aisha, though a bit off-key, which made her laugh. "You need more practice, Carter," Aisha teased, but in her heart, she treasured his openness. Faith was the thread that bound them. In a small prayer group, Amara shared her journey from surviving alone in Detroit to mourning David's death. James, listening intently, took her hand and whispered, "You're stronger than you think, Amara." His words, like a whispered prayer, opened her heart. During a Bible study, Aisha asked Michael, "Have you ever felt God was leading you somewhere unexpected?" Michael smiled. "Right now, I think He led me to you." The words made Aisha blush, half joking, half serious, but she knew he meant them. Their love was not without challenges. Amara, still carrying emotional scars, sometimes feared James wouldn't fully grasp her inner struggles. One evening, while walking along Lake Michigan, she confessed, "Sometimes I'm afraid the world won't accept us, James. We're too different." James paused, looked into her eyes, and said, "The world can say what it wants, but God brought us together, and that's all that matters." His words, like a vow, washed away her fears. Aisha, though confident, also faced lingering stares when she and Michael were seen together. But Michael always made her laugh, saying, "They're just jealous because we're amazing together." Their relationship deepened through meaningful little moments. James gifted Amara a journal to write her gospel songs. She cried when she received it. One evening, Michael surprised Aisha with a trip to a poetry club in Bronzeville, where she nervously read a poem about her journey, his proud eyes encouraging her every step. Michelle Harris, seeing the transformation in her daughters, would often say, "God is leading you. Cherish that." Her words served as gentle reminders that their love for James and Michael was more than emotion. It was part of a greater plan. By the summer of 2014, all four knew they couldn't imagine life without one another. Amara, who once dreamed of a complete family, saw in James the steadiness and love she had always yearned for. With her dream of becoming a gospel singer, Aisha found a partner in Michael who made her feel free. One evening during a prayer service, the four stood hand in hand singing, "How Great Thou Art Beneath Stained Glass Light." Amara felt a certainty rise in her soul. James was the one she wanted to spend her life with. Aisha, watching Michael's glowing smile, knew he was the one who would walk beside her no matter what. Their love, nurtured by faith and mutual understanding, led them toward a divine destination, a double proposal that would soon light up the international church where it all began. In the radiant sunset of a January day in 2015, Amara and Aisha Johnson, now 20 years old, felt their love for James and Michael Carter had bloomed into something eternal. After months of shared joy, trials overcome, and service together at the International Church, the two sets of twins had become inseparable. Amara found a quiet strength and tender soul in James, while Aisha saw in Michael boundless joy and a devoted heart. But neither of them expected that a winter evening would become a destiny-defining moment when James and Michael, with meticulous planning and deep love, both knelt to propose, turning the sisters' dreams into reality under God's watchful eyes. James, thoughtful and intentional, shaped by his years in a military household, had been planning the proposal for weeks. He wanted the moment to be romantic and spiritually meaningful, a reflection of their journey. He chose a small restaurant on the outskirts of Chicago, where warm golden lights and soft gospel melodies created an intimate atmosphere. Michael, ever spontaneous, selected a snow-covered park nearby, where street lamps lit the scene like something out of a fairy tale. Though different in style, the brothers secretly coordinated the timing, ensuring Amara and Aisha would receive their proposals on the same night, creating a once-in-a-lifetime double memory. That evening, James picked Amara up from the Harris home, telling her he wanted to take her for dinner to celebrate their friendship. Amara, wearing a simple blue dress and her hair neatly braided, giggled when she noticed James seemed more nervous than usual. "Are you okay, James?" she teased, eyes twinkling. James smiled and said simply, "I want tonight to be special." When they arrived at the restaurant, Amara was surprised to find a corner of the room adorned with candles and white roses, her favorite color. "James, what is all this?" she asked, heart pounding. James led her to the table where a dinner of jambalaya, her favorite dish, had been prepared. Meanwhile, Michael took Aisha to the park, saying he wanted her to unwind after a busy week. Aisha, in a bright red coat and scarf, laughed as Michael nearly slipped on a patch of ice. "You're just not made for winter," she joked, smiling. Michael guided her to a quiet corner of the park, where a small circle of lanterns surrounded a wooden bench, casting a soft glow on the snow. "Michael Carter, what are you up to?" Aisha asked, her voice laced with excitement. Back in the restaurant, halfway through dinner, James stood and pulled a small envelope from his jacket. "Amara, I want you to read this first," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Amara, her heart racing, opened the letter to see James's handwritten words. "Amara, you are my light, my answered prayer. I want to spend my life loving and protecting you." Tears welled in her eyes as she saw James kneeling, holding a sparkling diamond ring. "Amara Johnson, will you marry me?" he asked, hope shining in his eyes. Amara, choking up, nodded. "Yes, James. Yes." They embraced as the restaurant filled with applause and the song "Oh Happy Day" played softly from the speakers. Michael led Aisha to the bench in the park, then suddenly dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his coat. "Aisha, you're the fire that makes me live every day to the fullest," he said earnestly. "I won't promise perfection, but I promise to love you with all my heart." He opened the box to reveal a silver ring with a purple stone, Aisha's favorite color. "Aisha Johnson, will you marry me?" Laughing through tears, Aisha cried out, "Michael, of course I will." She pulled him to his feet, hugging him tight in the winter air, lanterns reflecting the joy on their faces. The next morning, when Amara and Aisha reunited, they both screamed in delight upon discovering James and Michael had proposed on the same night. "I knew it. God planned this," Aisha said, squeezing her sister's hand. Looking at the ring on her finger, Amara felt a deep sense of certainty. James was the man she wanted to build a future with. The sisters rushed to Michelle's home, recounting every detail, leaving their foster mother in joyful tears. "You've found godly men," Michelle said, embracing them both. The cultural fusion between Amara, Aisha, James, and Michael formed the foundation of their love. Amara and Aisha, with their Black heritage from Detroit and Bronzeville, brought a legacy of gospel music and inner resilience. James and Michael, with their white military upbringing, brought disciplined commitment and steadfast faith. The international church where they first met stood as a symbol of unity where differences became a strength. The double proposal was more than a personal commitment. It proved that love guided by faith can transcend all barriers. That moment, carefully orchestrated by James and Michael, was the pinnacle of their love story. Amara, who once dreamed of a complete family, saw the promise of a home in James. Aisha, with dreams of conquering the world, found a partner who would never leave her side in Michael. Beneath God's light and the witness of the international church, the two sets of twins were ready for the next step, a double wedding that would become a symbol of love, faith, and harmony, like a gospel hymn echoing through time. Under the brilliant light of a summer day in 2015, the International Church in the Bronzeville neighborhood of Chicago became the center of a modern-day fairy tale. Amara and Aisha Johnson, 20-year-old twin sisters who had overcome the dark days of Detroit and the grief of losing their adoptive father, now stood at the threshold of everlasting love. Beside them stood James and Michael Carter, white American twin brothers, who had brought light into their lives. This double wedding, held in the very place where all four first met, was not only the union of two couples, but a powerful symbol of love, transcending cultural boundaries, guided by faith, and witnessed by their community. With gospel music ringing and love overflowing, the day became an unforgettable hymn. Planning the wedding was a joyful journey of unity. Amara and Aisha, supported by their foster mother, Michelle Harris, spent months preparing. They chose a purple and white theme, representing elegance and faith, with subtle personal touches reflecting their unique personalities. Amara, reflective and soulful, wanted a ceremony rich in spiritual meaning. A vibrant and energetic Aisha added fun elements like a group dance after the ceremony. James and Michael, happy to let the sisters lead, contributed by selecting hymns and ensuring every guest felt welcomed. Michelle, her smile glowing, said, "You're creating something beautiful, just as God intended." The International Church was transformed into a heavenly garden on the wedding day. Purple and white ribbons draped the ceiling. White roses lined the aisle, and colored lights streamed through stained glass, casting a magical glow. Amara and Aisha held hands in the preparation room, eyes brimming with emotion. "I can't believe we're here." "Aisha." Amara whispered, her voice trembling. Aisha, with a playful smile, replied, "God brought us from Detroit to this day. This is our reward." When the church doors opened, both sisters walked down the aisle. Amara escorted by Sophie and Aisha by Michaela, as the choir sang, "How Great Thou Art." While waiting at the altar, James and Michael couldn't take their eyes off their brides. With soft eyes, James felt his heart pound as he saw Amara, the woman who had taught him that love means unconditional acceptance. Michael, beaming, looked at Aisha, the one who had brought joy into his life. As the sisters reached the altar, James gently took Amara's hand and whispered, "You're my dream come true." Michael, unable to hold back, said aloud, "You're the brightest star, Aisha." The church erupted in laughter. The ceremony, led by a beloved pastor of the International Church, was a blend of Black traditions and multicultural elements. Gospel songs like "Oh Happy Day" blended with traditional hymns, creating a deeply emotional symphony. Amara and James exchanged vows, voices shaking with resolve. "I promise to love and protect you under God's guidance." Aisha and Michael, in their style, added humor. "I promise to make you laugh every day and serve God together." The church stood and applauded when they exchanged rings as the choir sang Amazing Grace. The reception occurred in the church's grand hall, transforming into a celebration space. Tables were adorned with flowers and candles, and the menu reflected the family's cultural blend, From jambalaya and cornbread, from black Southern traditions, to Irish-style potato cakes in honor of David Harris. Michelle, her eyes glistening with tears, raised a toast. Today we celebrate love, family, faith, and unity. The four newlyweds led a joyful group dance with Michael and Aisha, energizing the room with their lively moves. Cultural harmony was the heart of the day. Amara and Aisha, rooted in the Black heritage of Detroit and Bronzeville, brought gospel music and a community spirit into the ceremony. James and Michael, raised in a white military family, offered reverence and devotion. Guests from Chicago's Black community to the Carter's friends from North Carolina joined together, showing that love and faith can overcome any boundary. A special moment came when LaToya Amara and Aisha's birth mother appeared and embraced her daughters. "I'm proud of you," she said, tears streaming down her face, marking a long-awaited reconciliation. The wedding wasn't just the union of four young people. It was the culmination of their journeys. Amara, once a frightened girl in Detroit, now stood beside James, the man who gave her security and peace. Aisha, who had dreamed of conquering the world, had found in Michael a partner who never stopped inspiring her. As they left the church under a shower of confetti, Amara looked at Aisha, and both smiled, knowing this was the beginning of a new chapter. Their double wedding, held where they first met, became a hymn of love, faith, and God's divine orchestration, preparing them for a future of service and devotion together. Amara and James Carter, along with Aisha and Michael Carter, in the gentle sunshine of Chicago, stepped into a new chapter of life following their radiant double wedding at the International Church in 2015. The two sets of twins, brought together by fate, shaped through hardship, and sustained by unwavering faith, now embarked on married life, filled with love, purpose, and service. From their home base in Bronzeville, they radiated light into their community, drawing inspiration from their journey from the struggles of Detroit to a love that crossed cultural boundaries. Guided by faith, Amara, Aisha, James, and Michael turned their passion into a beacon, proving that God writes the most beautiful stories through ordinary people. After the wedding, Amara and James moved into a small apartment in Bronzeville, just a few blocks from the International Church. Amara, chasing her dream of becoming a teacher, began working at a local elementary school, teaching literacy to children from underserved neighborhoods. She brought the patience and compassion that had once helped her survive Detroit, inspiring her students with stories of faith and resilience. James, ever thoughtful, continued his work at the church, leading educational programs and mentoring youth. He often visited Amara's classroom to tell Bible stories to the children. One boy once said, "Mrs. Carter is our hero," making Amara laugh, though deep down she knew James was her hero, with his gentle love and unwavering support. Aisha and Michael, with their energetic lifestyle, chose an apartment near a city park where they often hosted community picnics. Aisha, pursuing her dream of becoming a gospel singer, began performing at the International Church and local events, her powerful voice usually moving audiences to tears. With his boundless energy, Michael founded a small nonprofit that provides food and clothing for people experiencing homelessness. Aisha frequently joined him, using her voice to bring joy to those who needed it most. "We're a team," Aisha Michael said one night as they handed out meals on a bitterly cold evening. "The best team, thanks to God," Aisha replied, beaming. In 2016, the two couples co-founded Light of Hope, a nonprofit organization inspired by Amara and Aisha's journey. The initiative supported orphans and low-income families in Chicago, providing scholarships, food, and mentorship programs. Amara designed literacy classes, while Aisha ran music workshops to help kids express themselves. James led youth ministry programs teaching faith and responsibility. Michael, with his knack for organization, ensured every project ran smoothly. "We want to give others what we once needed most," Amara said during a fundraising event, her voice full of emotion, a home, a chance, and the belief that God is always there. Their cultural fusion continued to be the foundation of their lives. Amara and Aisha, with their Black heritage from Detroit and Bronzeville, brought gospel music, community spirit, and fierce resilience into their work. James and Michael, with their white military family background, offered discipline and deep devotion. This blend flourished at Light of Hope events, from Aisha's gospel performances to James's powerful sermons, from traditional Black dishes like cornbread to Michael's Irish potato cakes. The diversity drew people from across Chicago, from Bronzeville residents to volunteers of all backgrounds, showing that love and purpose can unite anyone. Marriage, of course, came with its trials, still carrying scars from her past. Amara sometimes feared she wasn't enough for James. One night, through tears, she shared that fear. James embraced her and whispered, "Amara, you're the greatest gift God ever gave me." Aisha and Michael, both strong-willed, occasionally clashed over how to manage their nonprofit, but always made peace through laughter and prayer. "We're two flames," Michael, Aisha said, "but God knows how to keep us burning together." Each challenge only deepened their love, reinforced by faith and the support of the Harris family. The four celebrated their anniversary with a camping trip outside Chicago every year. They pitched tents by the lake, sang hymns, and reflected on their journey. During one trip in 2020, Amara looked at James, Aisha, and Michael, her heart full. "We've come so far from those days in Detroit to this," she said, tears falling. Aisha, holding Michael's hand, added, "And we'll go even further, because God's not done writing our story." James, eyes soft, raised his glass of juice. "To love, to faith, and two miraculous sets of twins." Michael laughed and shouted, "And to the great days ahead." Their journey proves that God can turn broken pieces into a perfect picture. Amara and Aisha, once little girls surviving in the inner city, had become women of purpose, bringing hope to hundreds of children. James and Michael, once bound by the expectations of a military upbringing, had found freedom through love and service. The international church where they met, proposed, and married remained the heart of their lives, where they sang, prayed, and dreamed together of a better world. The story of these two sets of twins, woven from pain, love, and faith, is a living hymn, a reminder that all miracles are possible with God.